I just want to talk about a few techniques of flying modern gliders. They're kind of specific towards the new two-liners, but they're also very much, you can put this into practice into whatever glider you're flying. And some of what I might say might go against what common opinion is and what common knowledge is, but and I might be wrong. I'm not saying this is the way it is. All I'm saying is that this is what I do, and this is what keeps me safe on a daily basis testing and racing paragliders. And it means that over the years of flying, I haven't had a huge amount of serious cascading events, and I've yet to have to throw my reserve. So in my little mind, in my world, what I say is right, but do not take it as gospel. Take in all information you can from as many pilots as you can. Martin's going to be here and chipping in as well. And we may completely disagree, but that's where you have to use your own filters to absorb and just take in what you think is right. For me, to keep safe, to stay safe under a paraglider, the most important thing is training and practice. Training and practice. For me, SIV courses, that type of training is fundamental. You have to do it, and you have to do it regularly. Doing one SIV course is brilliant, that's the start, but that should be used as a catalyst to further your training. You need to practice, 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 and practice, so that when the shit hits the fan to you and you're halfway down a galley or in a canyon somewhere, you don't panic, you can make the right input at the right time. So training is really fundamental, and it's something that we as a community, as a flying community, we don't do enough. We tend to just say, okay, SIV, yep, I've done it, I've done a full stall, I've done a collapse and so on, that's it, don't need to do it again. But it's something we do need to train continuously with. So that, for me, is fundamental for a long, safe flying career.
I have a small input. What I find out is really awesome to do a basic acro. We call it acro. In my opinion, it's not acro. If you knew how to do a wing over without any single touch of the brake, you fully understand all the dynamics of the glider in every single moment. If you start shifting your body, you can do a ripping huge wing over if you do it well, and you have underneath the control the whole time because you are using only your body weight. These days, everybody just jumps on the brakes, do 1, 2, 3 huge ripping wing overs, and then they are in a huge trouble because they have no clue what the dynamics are. If you stay with your glider, if you do a basic, nice wing overs with your body weight only, you will understand your glider 100 times better than you do now, because it gives you feeling in a thermos what the glider do. In a turbulence, you immediately know, because all of these things you will learn through a basic, quite simple thing, wing overs. And wing overs only with the body weight. It takes time to generate the momentum, but once you do get into the rhythm, you would be surprised how much information you get from such a small and simple technique. And it's just about the dynamics. What he's saying is amazing, because then you start stalling the gliders and doing the spins, which is totally perfect for the SIV, because you are not flying them. And it helps you to be as well, in my opinion.
Yeah. So, going on to sort of real life flying, I've got a new theory, and well, it's not a new theory, and it's not my theory, it's just a common practice that we've been using for years, and it's all to do with our initial input. When you have an incident when you're flying, especially if you're flying at full speed, because that's when things become accentuated and more aggressive and more violent. Also with big collapses, the way a glider recovers is completely dependent upon, well, the type of glider you're flying, the size, the angle, the angle of the collapse, how deep it comes. You know, a very shallow angled collapse. Piece of paper. A very shallow angled collapse is, that's our wing here. A very shallow angle collapse is like this. They're just the leading edge brakes, but not really the trailing edge. A high angle collapse is more like that. So the collapse angle and the size is really important. That determines how the glider is going to behave. But for me, what's even more important is the air that the glider is then trying to recover in. If your glider is trying to recover in nice, smooth, clean lifting air, the glider can just, big collapse, not a huge amount of turn, and it reinflates and flies away, boom, on this heading. And you think, oh, my glider's dead safe. But that's just simply the air. You can have exactly the same collapse, and if the air that the glider is then trying to recover in is also in a turbulated flow, it's going to, boom, shoot a lot harder. Okay, so the type of air that the glider's recovering is fundamental to the behaviour of the wing once it has collapsed. So in those incidences, the most important part of that whole incident is your initial input, the very first thing that you do. Now there is no, unfortunately, there's no one input that works for every single incident. Every type of collapse you have in real life is completely unique. It's unique to you, to your wing loading, to the air that the glider is trying to recover in, and unique to your initial input. When we're taught to fly, and when we're doing SIV course, I mean I teach SIV, and when I'm teaching people to make SIV course, and we teach ourselves to do induced frontal collapses, where we deflate the whole glider, any SIV instructor will tell you, hands up, do nothing. Hands up, do nothing is the perfect recovery for a induced frontal in smooth, calm air. Because we all should know that if we start putting big, deep brake inputs, we risk coming into parachutal stalls and taking a really simple incident and turning it into something a little bit more serious. When you're out here and you're up any creeks up here, or you're in the big mountains, King Mountain, and you're in big air, strong air, and you take a frontal, the last thing you should do is go hands up. As soon as the glider deflates, the most important part of a big frontal is your first initial input. And I suggest to you that when you do feel the air go and the wing goes, it's a big input. Okay? You bang your brakes hard to open the nose, because if you don't, the tendency of a glider is to collapse from the centre and the tips can come forwards, very simply. And the higher up that performance range you go, up into the modern END type wings, the more likely that's going to be. Okay, because we've got plastics now, we're getting a big surface of, big area of drag. So instead of the gliders kind of rolling into a collapse, what they tend to do is flick downwards, create a huge wall of drag, and boom, the centre comes in. Tips obviously have less drag, and they will naturally come forwards. Okay, so what we have to do with the whole point of our initial input is to reduce the size of the collapse. So rather than 100% of the cord deflating, we can nip it in the bud at 50% of the cord, and get that centre opening and stop the tips coming forwards.
We have a saying for these tips. We call them a double snake, because they look that way. They just start going this, and they are really like two snakes trying to meet in the center.
Yeah.
And especially with the newbies, it's happened a lot of the time, and we said that try to avoid a double snake situation, because once they meet, you usually get somewhere tangled, and then it's a trouble.
It's game over.
Or the kiss of death.
The kiss of death, exactly.
Too, as well, yeah.
The kiss of death. So yeah, so everything in big frontals is to keep the tips apart, okay? And that requires a big brake input initially, the first thing that you do. And that generally will nip anything in the bud. It will stop it developing into something worse. Worst case scenario, when you've made that big input, is, I'm in parachutal stall. But if you've been trained, if you've been practiced, parachutal stall is really easy to recover from. Put your hands up all the way. Once you've got the tips apart and you've got the span of your wing above your head, put your hands up and the glider will fly.
And do not push the speed bar. That's as simple as this.
Okay.
And you will. And what I found out, if you have that feeling,
Do not or do?
always push the speed bar if it's not flying, because that's the easiest thing for you to recover into a normal fly. If you are dropping at the variables doing do, just push the speed bar and go it flies away.
Most gliders, if you've got your gliders in correct trim though,
It will fly by itself.
It will fly within 3 seconds of yourself, of putting your hands up.
And what I find out about the initial input is just as quick as you can, just really touch the brakes and don't do this, like, stay with the hands. No, it's better just bury it, just get into the farthest position you get and get them into a normal flying, like really good, and then just see what's going on. Alright, it's already maybe clean up, maybe not, but you get that first initial pump because something is trying to hit you at front and you hit it in the same amount of energy on the behind, and that behind basically helps to open it hugely. And then you can figure it out with the whole glide, the side of it, what's basically happening, rather than just keeping it buried, you know, then we can get it into a little trouble, just pump it and get it out.
Sometimes it may require 2 pumps as well.
Yeah.
We've, in testing with the Enzos and the R11s and the like, full speed frontals, the glider was banging in hard, just going into a small bundle, and you bang the brakes and nothing happens. You bang the brakes again, nothing happens. You bang it again hard and boom, it opens. There was a couple of instances with very good pilots last year where they took a frontal, and I'm talking about people like Alex Hoffer, you know, when they crashed, they took a frontal, a little bit of brake, and then hands up with the glider bundled. And if you go hands up, if you go passive in those situations, nothing's going to happen. You have to bang the brakes, okay? This is more specific information for the high performance wings, the Ice Peak 6s and the Enzos and the like, but it can happen on any glider. So initial input is really, really important on big frontals.
If you miss that first opportunity to pop it, and then you go into horseshoe at that point, are you just going?
No, you bang it again. You bang the brakes again, because you know if it goes there, you just want to get the tips apart as quickly as you can. The longer the tips linger together, the more chance they've got to go in.
Gotcha.